Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing about data validation in spreadsheet. What is data validation? It is nothing but we are just going to restrict the data entered into a cell depending on a certain criteria or condition. That is what data validation in spreadsheet. Okay, so here I have given some data regarding library record maintenance with the serial number, book ID, book name, number of books and status. I have inserted a table format using the insert tab, and now we'll be saying how to implement the data validation here. Okay, so I have to select any cell for which I have to implement the data validation option. I'm selecting the book ID, the first cell of the book ID. After that, we have to go to the data tab. Under data tab, we have an option data validation, and again select data validation from the submenu. So once I have selected, I'll be given a dialog box with the name data validation. Under this dialog box, we have three options for data validation: settings, input message and error alert. Under settings, we have several validation criteria. As I said earlier, we are going to validate the data depending on the criteria or condition. So those criteria were inbuilt in spreadsheet and will be having several options under allow. So what kind of data you want the user to enter, or else you just allow the user to enter, those option has to be selected under the allow option, allow drop down. You have several options over here like any value, whole number, decimal number, list, date, time, text length, and finally custom. If you feel none of the option from this is not suitable for your program or exercise, you can just go for the customization process. I am here selecting the whole number for my orderer, that is book ID. And I am just going to select from which range the data, the number has to be, the ID has to be entered, whether greater than a certain number or less than a certain number or from a range, particular range. So I am selecting between. So between is specifying or mentioning a range for the data. So as we have a range, we must have a starting point or starting value and ending value. So the minimum value I have mentioned is 101 and maximum value roughly 500 I have mentioned. So this is what the validation criteria is. Once you have completed this, move on to the next tab, input message. So in input message is nothing but you'll be giving a small description or instruction to the user about what kind of data is allowed to enter into a cell. Because the user may not, sometimes the user may not be aware what kind of data has to be entered into a particular cell. They may be entering some alphabets in book ID, but I have just restricted to enter only whole numbers in the settings. So I have to mention or I have to instruct the user what kind of data has to be or what kind of data is allowed to enter into a cell, particular cell. So I am here using the input message for that purpose. So in title I can give any as my wish or as your wish, you can give any kind of title. I am here using book ID, and input message I am just going to type the description. Enter the book ID using numbers only. Okay. Next one is error alert. We know what is error. If the user is just overcoming, for not following the instructions, they have to show some error alert. In error, we have three types of styles: stop, warning, and finally information. So among these three, you can select any one according to your need. So stop is for just letting the user to know to stop the process at that point of time. And warning is to give a warning to the user so that they won't be repeating the same mistake once again. And finally, information to letting know the user about something. So I am here using the stop style, and again title we have to give some title. I am giving us error, and error message the ID should contain only numbers. Okay, so once I have created the data validation criteria, I have to click OK. So see, as I have selected the cell 101, I am just showing the input message, whatever I have given in that dialog box, book ID, enter the book ID using numbers. So this just instructs the user to know what kind of data has to be entered into the cell. Now I'm just trying to enter some alphabets. For example, see what happens. It shows an error alert what I have just the given in the data validation. ID should contain only numbers. So we have three buttons like retry, cancel, and help. You can just click one of them and end the process. Okay, so this is how the data validation works. So just for repeating this particular data validation to all other cells, you can just drag this particular cells to the remaining cells. Again, I have just entered the book name and number of books in a manual manner. And again, in status, I have used the data validation. Let us see how I have used. So again, go to data tab. And under data validation, select the data validation from the sub menu. You'll be given a dialog box again. So under settings, in the allow criteria, allow drop down, I have selected list. Because for status, I'm just giving two status over here. One is available and another one is not available. So mentioning or just using a list may be give a better experience to the user instead of typing the status manually. So I'm using a list over here. So list, you have to mention what kind of data, what kind of parameters will be available to the user in the source drop down. So in source text box, I am just giving available, comma, not available. Just remember that each and every value must be separated by a comma. So I am here using only two values, available and not available. I have just separated those two values using a comma. So click OK once you have completed. So see, in this I am having available and not available. Once I select the option, it will be appearing in the cell. So I can just change the options to available and not available according to the availability of the books in the library. So finally, I have just calculated the total number of books using the sum function ranging from D3 to D12 cells. So I'm just adding or just using sum function. I'm just adding all the books in the library. So this is how we'll be using the data validation for restricting an user to enter the data into a cell under certain criteria. Thank you.